You're just a walking wallet to us. Frank, don't get it twisted. Those were the words my son-in-law, Tyler, spat across the dinner table one chilly November evening in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. His fork clinked against the fine china I'd paid for, his smirk curling like smoke from the cigarette he always lit. The second dessert was served. My daughter, Melissa, didn't even flinch. She stared down at her wine glass, swirling the red liquid in slow circles as if she'd been preparing for this moment all along. The turkey on the table went cold, but the fire in my chest burned hotter than ever. I'm Frank Miller, 68 years old, a retired machinist who gave his life to the factory lines and later to running a small repair shop on Main Street. I built a modest but steady fortune over the decades. Nothing flashy, just savings, a paid-off house, and a few investments that had treated me kindly. Enough to live out my years without worry, and maybe help my only daughter find her footing in this hard world. Or so I thought. Before I continue, if you're new here, please like, comment, and subscribe, and tell us where you're watching from. Now, let me tell you something about Tyler. He wasn't born into money, but you wouldn't know it by the way he strutted around in designer suits and shiny cufflinks. The man had ambition, sure, but it was the hollow kind. He didn't build, he didn't create, he didn't even work for long stretches. He schemed. And Melissa, my sweet girl, had gotten wrapped up in his silk-tongued promises of a better life. Over the last 5 years, I'd helped them more than I care to admit. A down payment for their oversized suburban home. A new SUV when Melissa wanted something safer for the kids. Even covered their credit card debt once when Tyler said his business investment was about to pay off. Each time, I told myself it was for Melissa, for my grandkids, for family. But hearing those words, walking wallet, something in me cracked. I sat back in my chair, looking at the two of them across from me. Melissa finally lifted her gaze, her eyes softer than his but complicit all the same. Tyler leaned back, smug, as though he'd finally said the quiet part out loud, and there was no taking it back. "You've had a good run, Frank," he continued, "but money doesn't do you much good rotting away in that old house of yours. You might as well help the next generation actually put it to use." The next generation. He didn't mean my grandkids. He meant himself. I didn't speak much that night. Didn't need to. Sometimes silence is louder than shouting. But as I drove home through the quiet Iowa streets, the frost beginning to cling to my windshield, I felt a strange calm settle over me. They thought I was just a wallet. Well, they were about to find out just how quickly a wallet could snap shut. And maybe, just maybe, close around their throats. The words walking wallet echoed in my mind for days, like a hammer hitting an anvil in the dead of night. I kept going about my routine. Morning coffee at Linda's Diner on First Avenue, reading the Cedar Rapids Gazette, tinkering in my garage with the old Ford pickup I'd been restoring. But the sting of Tyler's smirk wouldn't fade. At Linda's, the regulars noticed I was quieter than usual. Old Bill from the next booth leaned over one morning and said, "Frank, you look like a man who's swallowed nails. You all right?" I just gave him a small smile. "I'm fine, Bill, just thinking." Truth was, I was thinking more clearly than I had in years. Melissa came by the house a few days after that dinner. She stood in my kitchen, her nails clicking against the granite countertop I'd installed with my own 2 hands back when her mother was still alive. "Dad," she started, "Tyler didn't mean what he said. He gets frustrated. You know how he is." I looked at her, my only daughter, the girl I used to carry on my shoulders through the Iowa State Fair, who I taught to ride a bike on our cracked old driveway. "Melissa," I said quietly. He meant every word, and so did you, by sitting there and letting it slide. She winced. "Dad, it's not like that. You've always been so good with money, and, well, we're not. We need guidance. Help. That's all. Guidance? That wasn't what Tyler wanted. He wanted control. He wanted access. He wanted my lifetime of work at his fingertips. But I didn't argue. I simply nodded and let her talk, the way you let a storm pass before you check the damage. Later that night, sitting in my recliner, I thought back to the sacrifices I'd made. 30 years at the factory, swing shifts, overtime, sometimes missing Christmas mornings just to keep the heat on. After the factory closed, I'd scraped together enough to open Miller's Repair, patching up everything from tractors to washing machines for folks around town. I'd saved every dime I could, always thinking about Melissa's future. Now, that future looked like a black hole, with Tyler at its center. I needed to protect what I had left. The next morning, I made an appointment with an old friend, Jack Henderson, a local lawyer I'd known since high school. Jack's office sat on the second floor above a barber shop downtown, smelled of old paper and leather chairs. He raised an eyebrow when I told him what happened. "Frank, I've been warning folks for years. Money brings out the worst in families. You'd be surprised how many sons-in-law walk through here thinking they can bully their way into inheritances." I leaned forward. "Jack, I want to make sure Melissa and the kids are taken care of. But not Tyler. Not him. I don't want a dime of mine lining that man's pockets." Jack gave me a long, thoughtful look, then reached for his pen. "We can set things up so your assets bypass him entirely. Trusts, clauses, conditions. Tyler won't even be able to sneeze without your approval. But Frank," he paused, "are you ready for the storm that'll bring?" I thought of Tyler's smirk, of Melissa's silence, of the way they'd carved me up at my own dinner table. "Jack," I said, steady as stone, "I've weathered storms all my life. This time, I'll be the one steering the ship." When I left his office, the cold wind stung my face, but I felt lighter somehow. Tyler thought I was just a wallet. He was about to learn that some wallets had locks and keys he'd never touch. But what I didn't know then, what would change everything, was that Tyler wasn't done with me yet. In fact, he was already planning his next move. 2 weeks after that meeting with Jack, I got my first taste of Tyler's next move. It came on a Sunday afternoon, when Melissa pulled into my driveway with Tyler riding shotgun. I was out back, splitting logs for the winter woodpile. The air was sharp with the smell of oak and gasoline, my gloves worn from years of work. "Dad!" Melissa called, stepping out of the SUV. Her voice had that high, rehearsed cheerfulness that told me she was nervous. Tyler didn't bother with a greeting. He strolled over in his tailored coat, smirking like the king of the block. "Frank, we need to talk." I set the axe down slowly. "Then talk." He exchanged a glance with Melissa before speaking. "We've been thinking. This place, your house, it's too much for you. The stairs, the yard work, the repairs. You're not a young man anymore. Melissa and I agree. It's time you consider moving into assisted living." The words hit harder than any axe swing. Melissa kept her eyes down, fiddling with her gloves. "Dad, it's not like we're trying to get rid of you. We just want you safe. You could sell this house, get a nice place, and have plenty left over. We'd help manage things." Tyler crossed his arms. "Exactly. You cash out. We take the stress off your shoulders. Everyone wins. Everyone," I thought bitterly. "Except me." I stared at them, my jaw tight. "This house is mine. I built this life brick by brick. And you're telling me to hand it over because what? You think I'm old and useless?" Tyler's smirk widened. "It's not about useless. It's about smart. You sit on assets like some dragon guarding gold, and for what? To die alone in a house too big for you?" Melissa flinched, whispering, "Tyler, please." But he kept going. "Be reasonable, Frank. Houses don't last forever. Neither do people." I could feel my blood boiling, but I forced myself to stay calm. Losing my temper would only give him what he wanted. So I looked him dead in the eye and said, "Tyler, let me make one thing clear. I'm not moving into a nursing home, and I'm not selling my house. Not today, not ever. This is mine. The smug grin slipped off his face for just a second. Melissa tried again, her voice trembling. Dad, please think about it. We can't keep... I held up a hand. Enough! This conversation is over. They left not long after, Tyler muttering something under his breath as he yanked the SUV door shut. I watched the taillights disappear down the street, the echo of his arrogance lingering in the cold air. That night, I sat at the kitchen table, staring at the framed photos on the wall, Melissa in her graduation gown, my late wife smiling in the sunlight, my grandkids laughing at a summer cookout. I thought of all I'd worked for, all I'd sacrificed, and now my own daughter and her husband were circling me like vultures. That was the moment I made my decision. I wasn't just going to protect what was mine. I was going to teach Tyler a lesson he'd never forget. The kind of lesson a man learns only when the ground is yanked out from under him. And the best part? I already knew exactly where to start. I didn't sleep much that night. Instead, I sat at my desk with a pen, a yellow legal pad, and the quiet determination of a man who's been pushed too far. By morning, I had a plan. The first thing I did was drive down to Midwest Bank and Trust, the same little brick building on Main Street where I'd opened my first account 35 years ago. The tellers still knew me by name. When I walked in, the air smelled faintly of coffee and old paper. "Frank," called out Marge, a gray-haired teller I'd known for decades. "Haven't seen you in a while. What brings you in?" I leaned on the counter and smiled. "Marge, I need to talk to your loan officer. Is Gary still around?" Within minutes, I was sitting across from Gary Anderson, a middle-aged banker in a navy suit who'd helped me refinance my truck years ago. He adjusted his glasses, flipping through some papers. "So, what can I do for you, Frank?" I told him everything. About Melissa and Tyler, about their push to sell my home, about my suspicion that Tyler was strapped for cash. Gary listened carefully, then leaned back in his chair. "You've always kept things clean, Frank. House deeds in your name alone. No co-signers. Mortgage has been paid off for years." He tapped the folder. "If they want control, they're out of luck unless you hand it to them." That was music to my ears, but I wasn't finished. "Gary," I said, lowering my voice, "what if I wanted to make a purchase? Cash heavy, something that could change the balance of power." He raised an eyebrow. "What kind of purchase?" I slid him a piece of paper where I'd scrawled one word. Mansion. Not just any mansion. Tyler's mansion, the one Melissa bragged about every Christmas, the one with marble countertops, a 3-car garage, and a mortgage that was bleeding them dry. Gary's lips twitched into a smile. "Frank, I like where your head's at. And believe me, with your credit and assets, you could make that move without breaking a sweat." By the time I left the bank, the wheels were already in motion. 2 days later, I made a quiet call to a realtor friend, Sandra. She confirmed what I suspected. Tyler's business wasn't doing well. Word around town was he was juggling debt, leaning on lines of credit, and desperate to keep his flashy image intact. And here's the kicker. The bank had already flagged his mansion for pre-foreclosure review. Sandra's voice crackled through the phone. "Frank, if you've ever wanted to turn the tables on that son-in-law of yours, now's the time. You've got first dibs if you want it." I nearly laughed out loud. It was like the universe was handing me a silver platter. The real test came the following weekend, when Melissa invited me to dinner at their place. The house was lit up like a showroom, chandeliers blazing, the smell of roast beef wafting from the kitchen. Tyler greeted me at the door with his fake grin. "Frank, glad you could make it. Try not to trip on the stairs, huh?" I let the insult slide. For now, dinner was a performance. Tyler bragged about his business deals, Melissa chimed in about their plans for expansion, and I sat there, sipping my iced tea, knowing full well the walls were closing in on them. At one point, Tyler leaned across the table. "So, Frank, thought any more about that nursing home idea?" We could really help smooth the transition. I looked him dead in the eye and said, "Actually, Tyler, I have been thinking a lot about homes lately. In fact, I might be making a move sooner than you think." Melissa blinked, confused. "What do you mean, Dad?" I just smiled and cut another slice of roast beef. "You'll see," Tyler chuckled, shaking his head. "You're a stubborn old man, Frank. One day, you'll thank me for pushing you." Maybe. But the thanks he was going to get wouldn't be the kind he expected. Because by then, the papers were already moving through the bank. And within weeks, the mansion he was so proud of, the symbol of his arrogance, would belong to me. The papers came through faster than I imagined. By mid-March, the ink was dry. The mansion that Tyler flaunted, the one Melissa thought elevated her above me, was mine. I didn't move in. That wasn't the point. I still loved my modest two-story home, the one where my late wife and I had planted tulips by the mailbox and carved our initials into the oak tree out back. No mansion could replace the memories woven into those walls. But owning theirs, that was justice. I decided the reveal had to be public. Quiet revenge wasn't enough, not after the humiliation they'd tried to put me through. So I waited until Easter Sunday. The whole family was gathered at the local Methodist church, sunlight streaming through stained glass windows, kids running around in pastel dresses and clip-on ties. After service, folks lingered in the fellowship hall, sipping coffee, nibbling on deviled eggs and pie. Melissa and Tyler were there, of course, basking in their usual spotlight. Tyler in his sharp gray suit, Melissa in a silk dress that probably cost more than my monthly groceries. I stood off to the side, holding a manila envelope. My heart thumped steady, but not from nerves. This was resolve. When the moment felt right, I walked over. "Melissa, Tyler, got something I'd like to share." Tyler smirked. "Oh? Don't tell me you finally signed up for the nursing home?" A few people nearby chuckled, not realizing the cruelty behind his words. Melissa gave me that same pitying smile. I pulled the papers from the envelope and laid them on the table. The church lights glinted off the black ink of the deed. "This," I said calmly, "is the title to your house." The room went quiet. Forks froze halfway to mouths. Melissa blinked, color draining from her face. Tyler snatched the papers, scanning them like a man checking his own death warrant. This isn't possible," he stammered. "That house is mine. Was yours," I corrected. Bank had it flagged for foreclosure. I stepped in, bought it out clean. No debt, no mortgage. Every brick, every shingle, every chandelier in that house belongs to me now. Melissa's jaw tightened. You can't do this to us, Dad." I locked eyes with her. "You tried to put me in a home. You mocked me, belittled me, acted like I was nothing. But let me be clear. I built my life with these hands, with work boots you both laughed at. And those boots just bought your mansion out from under you." Gasps rippled through the crowd. A few old friends of mine, farmers, mechanics, folks who knew the value of hard work, nodded in approval. Tyler's face turned red, veins bulging at his temples. "You can't just throw us out." "Legally I can," I said. "But I'm not heartless. I'll give you 30 days to pack up. After that, you're trespassers." Melissa's eyes welled with tears. For the first time, she looked small, stripped of her shiny armor. 30 days later, I drove by their old house. A moving truck sat in the driveway, men hauling out designer furniture and cardboard boxes. Melissa stood on the lawn, arms crossed, glaring at me like I was the villain. Tyler refused to meet my eyes. He just muttered orders, sweating in his dress shirt as his empire crumbled around him. I didn't gloat. I didn't need to. I simply tipped my cap, the same dusty work cap I'd worn for years, and said, "Sometimes life teaches lessons the hard way. I hope you learn yours." Then I drove back to my modest home, tulips blooming by the mailbox, oak trees swaying in the breeze. In the end, I didn't keep the mansion. After they were gone, I sold it for a good price and used the money to set up a college fund for my grandkids, the only innocent ones in all this. Melissa and Tyler lost their luxury, their pride, and their carefully curated image. But me? I regained my dignity, my peace, and the satisfaction of knowing that no one, not even my own children, could ever erase the worth of my life's work. And that was enough. Tell us your thoughts in the comments. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more stories.